How's it going? Monday. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon, June 24th, 2024. Got the Dodger hat on, Dodger shirt. Milestone. I was episode 1000. Why am I wearing the Dodgers today? As a little kid, I went to my very first baseball game. It was at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, which is about 35 miles to Dodger Stadium. My dad took me to a game, became a baseball fan. Here I am. Got a YouTube channel, 1,000 videos. How about it? Milestone. And I'm just getting started. I'm not stopping. You think after all these videos, I would have said everything there is to say about baseball. Are you kidding? This game of baseball has a unique history from 1871 to the present. You can have 10,000 videos on baseball accomplishments, players, games, stats, whatever part of the game. You can keep talking and talking about baseball. And that's what I've done in all my videos. I've covered a lot of stats. I'm a stat guy. Accomplishments, players, Hall of Famers, baseball players who are not in the Hall of Fame. I've done records, World Series. I've done a lot in all these videos, 1,000 of them. And so not only do I have the YouTube channel with 1,000 videos, but I also wrote 10 baseball books. And this is what this video is going to be about. My 10 baseball books. So as I lean over, I'm grabbing my very first book I wrote. Baseball is a numbers game. When did I write it? I'll open it up. 2022. So since 2022, I've written 10 baseball books, 3 or 4 a year. This one, examining the achievements and stats of baseball Hall of Famers, focused on the Hall of Fame players, batters and pitchers. And I wrote 83 chapters and an epilogue. How about that? I cover a lot in this one. Total hits record, bases record. I can't list all 83 chapter titles. But in this one, I just go over everything I could think of as far as the accomplishments. The records, the hits, total bases, home runs, runs batted in, runs scored, best hitters through the decades, most home runs, games played, stolen bases. Then I do the pitching, best pitchers, best pitching, wins, innings, strikeouts, all the decades. Then I get into World Series games, baseball decades, questions, individual performances. Baseball is a numbers game. That was my very first book. Okay? That's number one. My second baseball book, I'll lean over. Baseball matchups. All-time player matchups. Who's the greatest? Matching up. And I did Hall of Famers again. And I wrote this one 2022. Second book in a year. I'll keep that right there. Okay. My second book. This one is thicker. See how thick it is? You know what? You want to see how many pages this one is? This is incredible. I don't know how I did this one. 801 pages. I got the sun coming in right there. Okay, there it is. Got it. I match up players. What do I mean by matchup? Babe Ruth versus Ty Cobb. Who is the better player? Look at the stats. Look at the what ifs. have each player play the same number of games, presupposedly. Look at their ratio of what they did per game, their home runs, their hits, their RBIs, their run score, and all that per game they played. Do the averages and match them up. I do the Hall of Famers. This one I have 38 chapters. You know who is the #1 matchup of all time as far as I matched up this guy with over 100 Hall of Famers. You don't have to do all of them because some have less stats. I matched up Babe Ruth with 100 Hall of Fame players. He beat them all in matchups as far as being greater. His accomplishments were greater than all these guys. For example, he beat Henry Aaron and here's what I did. In the matchups, I took all the offensive categories. Career average, runs scored, runs batted in, home runs, triples, doubles, singles, total bases, slugging, on base, base on balls. Stolen bases, 100 RBI seasons, 100 runs scored seasons, most runs in a season, most RBIs in a season, highest average, 200 hit seasons, total hits, games, at-bats, and years played. Matched them all up, did all the averages. It's a labor of love. Babe Ruth beat them all. Who was #2? Lou Gehrig. Who was #3? Ty Cobb. And then I just go on and on. I go 1 through 100 as far as the matchups, as far as their rankings. 801 pages on that one. How about that? Okay, I've got 2 books down. I'm gonna go, I need to look right here, my 3rd book I wrote. Now I've written 10. I have to do it in order. So in order to do that, I need to look what year I wrote it. Can you believe? I don't know the order. So let's see. I have it here, the order. All right, here it is. The first book was Baseball is a Numbers Game. The second book was Baseball Matchups. The third book, I wanted to get into defense. So if I lean over here, here it is, my 3rd book. The best gloves on the baseball field. Defense. All-time defensive player matchups. This one not as big. Wrote it in 2022. My 3rd book in 1 year. And it's just 234 pages. But what I do is I match up the greatest defensive players of all time. And I looked at each individual position to see who was the greatest at each individual position. Catcher, pitcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, left field, center field, right fielder. Who were the greatest defensive players at their position? Well, how do you do it? How did I determine what they did? Well, it was simple. I took how many innings they played, how many putouts, how many assists, how many chances, how many errors did they have, and I factored all that in on the defense. Games played, field percentage, chances, putouts, assists, double plays, innings played, fewest errors. I analyzed all that. It was a labor of love. You may ask, who was the greatest catcher of all time? According to my analysis, Gary Carter. You may disagree. You think it's Johnny Bench or Ivan Rodriguez. But if I looked at all the stats and their innings, field percentage, and all that, and did all the numbers and added it all up, it was Gary Carter. Pitcher, first base, second, third, shortstop, left, center, and right. You want to know who they all were? It would take too long to tell you all. That's why this book, the third one, was focused on defense. This was a lot of fun. I can tell you right now, the greatest center fielder of all time, it's not Willie Mays. He was number 2. It was Tris Speaker. He had more chances, more assists, and more putouts, and more double plays than Willie Mays. Sorry. That's my third book. Book number 4. Got it right here. Lift over. Number 4, my fourth book. Old school versus new school baseball. What do I mean? Would you believe I wrote this in 2022? That's 4 books in 1 year. Whew. This one, I compared the eras. 1871 to 1950, or 1949, I should say. I consider that the old school baseball era. Old school. 1950 to 2023, I consider the new school era baseball. And what I did was I looked at each era to see who won in batting average, which era was better in batting average, old or new. The hits, runs scored, runs batted in, home runs, triples, doubles, singles, slugging on base, total bases, base on balls, stolen bases. And I did it with pitching also. Pitching wins, innings, games started, complete games, strikeouts, shutouts, ERA, winning percentage, and saves. Old school won. They had better batting averages. They had better runs batted in. They had better runs scored. A lot of categories, they won it. New school won in some other categories, like more home runs in the new school era, because there's more games and more players. But the old school beat out the new school. I wrote that book, Old School versus it. Analyzed it all. It was a lot of fun. That was my fourth book. Book number 5. There it is right here. Greatest offensive seasons of all time. Ranking the Hall of Fame players. Again, I focused on them. Hall of Fame. Who had the best offensive season of all time as far as all their stats, and you add it up as one number? This book, let's see, what do I got here? 222 pages. I rank it. Player profiles. For example, look at Babe Ruth's offensive seasons. Rank it as far as, or what do you do? Okay, here's what you do. You take their batting average, hits, home runs, RBIs. Let's see. Batting average, hits, runs scored, runs batted in, home runs, triples, doubles, singles, slugging, on base, base on balls, total bases, and stolen bases. Look at their season, add it up as one number. And then rank all the players. I'll give you a hint. Babe Ruth's 1921 season is ranked as the greatest offensive season of all time. He had a score of 29.04. When you add his batting average, 378, runs scored, 177 runs scored, runs batted in, 168. So you add all these numbers. He had 59 homers, 16 triples, 44 doubles, 85 singles, slugging 846, on base 512, base on balls 145, total bases 457, stolen bases 17. Add that all up as one number, all those numbers. He had 29.04. I looked at all these players, could not find anybody who beat that number, 29.04. In fact, Babe Ruth has the top 3 offensive seasons of all time, adding all those numbers in all the categories. 1921 was the best, 1923 was second, and 1920 was third. Lou Gehrig came in number 4, his 1927 season. And then Babe Ruth was number 5, his 1927 season. Then you go on, you got Jimmy Fox, Hugh Duffy, Roger Hornsby, you got Ted Williams, Hack Wilson. They all get in there. And you add up all their seasons. Sam Musial, Larry Walker got in there. Ty Cobb's in there. You keep going. George Sisler, Mickey Mantle, Al Simmons, Hank Greenberg, so forth, so forth. Greatest offensive season, I ranked it from 1 to whatever the number was as far as how many seasons. This was my 5th book. And the first one in the year 2023. So 4 in 2022. What's next? My 6th book. I got it here. Number 6. Baseball's top 5 player list. Yearly leaders of every batting category. This was a long one. This was 400 pages. What did I do in this one? I start with 1871 and I list the top 5 players for that year in home runs. That was chapter 1. Chapter 2, the top 5. Okay, chapter 1. The top 5 players in home runs for the year 1871. And for the chapter, I go from 1871 to 2023. Okay? Top 5 in each individual year. Second chapter, batting average, same thing. Top 5 each individual year from 1871 to 2023. And I go all the way, home runs, batting average, runs scored, runs batted in, triples, doubles, singles, total bases, slugging, on base, base on balls, stolen base, and hits. This is the whole one. The top 5 in each individual year in all those categories. That was my 6th book. Number 7. So since I did batters, why not pitching? 7th book. Pitching. Not as much. 330 pages. This one, I do the top 5 in each individual year, 1871 to 2023. But I take the categories of most wins, 1871, the top 5. And I keep going every year. And then I do chapter 2, innings. Then I do strikeouts, shutouts, games started, complete games, earned run average, winning percentage, and saves. That was my 7th book. Yearly baseball's top 5 pitcher list. How about that? The 8th book. Right? Yeah. Baseball's best hitters and pitchers. You say I've already did something like this. This was different. Exceptional players, 1871 to 2023. What did I do in this one? I looked at the stats to see which player had the most batting categories in an individual year? And who won the year? 1871. I have the categories: batting average, hits, home runs, triples, doubles, singles, run bat in, run scored, slugging, on base, base on ball, stolen base, and total bases. Okay, I got all those categories. Who won the most categories that year, 1871? Levi Merrill won 5 categories in 1871. So what did I do? I went each individual year to see who won all the categories, and I did it with pitching also. Because after batting, I did pitching. And you do wins, innings, strikeouts, shutouts, games started, complete games, earned run average, winning percentage, and saves. Exceptional players. Who won the individual year? And sometimes players would tie with each other. As far as the batting, who won the most Player of the Year awards in batting? Well, if you go to the end of this book, I list it. Some guy named Babe Ruth, 10 times, 10 seasons, won the most categories. Ty Cobb had 6, Ted Williams 6. As far as pitching, Warren Spahn 6 times Player of the Year. Pete Alexander 5. So I go analyze, and I go through all that. That was my 8th book. What was my 9th book? I'm interested in box scores. Have you heard of this guy, Babe Ruth? Listen to this. Babe Ruth's box scores from 1914 to 1935. I look at every game that Babe Ruth played in, and I looked in his box score, and I list it for each individual season. Chapter 1, 1914, and I go through his career, which ended in 1935. So 22 chapters. Each year I do his box score for the year. So I did Babe Ruth on this one, about 236 pages. That was my 9th book. This was written 2024. The other books were 2023 and 2022. That was book number 9, and here's book number 10. I got done with this one. Since I did Babe Ruth, why not do Ty Cobb and do the same thing? His box scores. He had a longer career. He went from 1905 to 1928. Ty Cobb. This was a little longer than Babe Ruth. Babe, about 280 pages. This guy was 340 pages because he had more box scores. Greatest hitter of all time, Ty Cobb. That's 10 books. And here's the breaking news. Are you ready? I've already finished Lou Gehrig. I did his box scores. I haven't published it yet. It's going to come out this year. So I finished Lou Gehrig. That'll be my 11th book. My 12th book will be Stan Musial. And my 13th book will be Henry Aaron. Why did I do Stan Musial over Henry Aaron? Because he had a better batting average. 330 batting average. Henry Aaron, 305. Did Babe Ruth because he's the home run guy and the 342 batting average. And I did Ty Cobb because he had the 366 batting average. I did Lou Gehrig because he had a 340 batting average, and he was something I really admired. I did Stan Musial because he's got the 3,600 hits. Got to do Henry Aaron. He's got 3,700 hits and the 755 homers, but his batting average was lower. So I did Stan Musial before that. After Henry Aaron, I'm debating who to do after that. I'm thinking Tony Gwynn. 338 batting average. And I'm thinking Ted Williams also, but he missed some time in the military. And I'm thinking Joe DiMaggio. He missed time in the military. thinking Jimmy Fox, and you got Roger Hornsby. These are the guys in the top 10 as far as greatest of all time. Honus Wagner, possibly. So what do you think? Can I do it? Can I get through all those baseball books? Also, I'm also working on a ranking book. I want to get into the players who are not in the Baseball Hall of Fame too and add them. See where they rank, because a lot of them didn't make the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I'm working on ranking every single player. Not every single player. Okay, I cut it off at a certain limit. I'm ranking about 500 players. There's about 100 and what do you got? 160 or so in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So there's like 450 who are not. No, 350 who are not. I wanted to rank those guys to see where they ended up. And you know what? Some of those guys beat out the Hall of Famers as far as ranking. Did you know that? But they're not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I'm working on ranking the top 500 players in baseball history. What about that one? And let's see. And also, I'm thinking of another book, which would be ranking the all-time box scores of 500 players. You know, a Hall of Famers had box scores, but there were guys who are not in the Hall of Fame that had an excellent box score. Did you know that? You've heard of Johnny Burnett, right? He had 9 hits in one game. What was his box score that day, and where does it rank as far as the all-time box scores of all time? There's a guy named Walker Cooper. Have you heard of him? He had an amazing box score one day. He had something like 6 hits, 6 runs scored, 10 RBIs, something like that. And he had 7 at bats. What I do is I add the number. Walker Cooper had one of the greatest box scores of all time. So did Jim Botany. He had 12 RBIs in one game. He had 6 hits. Where does his box score rank? How about ranking Babe Ruth's best box score of all time? Where does it rank? There are Hall of Famers that had a better box score as far as Babe Ruth's greatest box score. Ty Cobb had 6 hits in one game. But there are guys that are not in the Baseball Hall of Fame that had a better box score in one individual game. But they didn't have a career as Ty Cobb or Babe Ruth had, some of these guys. So Johnny Burnett, I know him. He had 9 hits in a game, extra inning game. He's way up there as far as the greatest box score of all time. And Walker Cooper with 10 RBIs and 6 hits and 6 runs scored, something like that. And there's some other guys that had an amazing box score. I'm working on that book. Greatest box score of all time. Let's see, I've started it a little bit. I'll give you a hint. Let's see if I can find it. I'm working also on the position players. Which position player had the greatest box scores of all time? All right, let's see here. I've got it right here, the list. You want to hear it? Let's see if I can find it. Just give me a second here. And I'm still working on it, so it's not complete yet. let's see. Here's the list. I got it. You're going to be amazed at this. Listen to this. Walker Cooper has the greatest box score of all time. He had 7 at-bats, 5 runs scored, 6 RBIs. No. Okay. 7 at-bats, 5 runs scored. So 7 plus 5 is 12. I'm adding the numbers. 6 hits. That's 18. 7 plus 5 is 12, plus 6 is 18. And he had 10 RBIs. That box score has a total of 28, taking the at-bat, 7 at-bats, the run scored, 5, the hits, 6, and the RBI, 10. Walker Cooper, on July 6, 1949, had the greatest box score total of all time. His score was 28. I could not find anybody else with a higher score. Jim Botany was number 2. Remember his day? 6 hits, 3 runs scored, 6 hits, and 12 RBIs. 27 was the number. Jimmy Fox had a day at the plate. 9 at-bats, 4 runs scored, 6 hits, and 8 RBIs. Anthony Rendon, he's not even playing right now. He's injured. He had a day at the plate. 6 at-bats, 5 runs scored, 6 hits, and 10 RBIs. So his line was 6-5, 6-10. Johnny Burnett's in there somewhere. Yeah, here he is. He had an extra inning game. 11 at-bats. So that really adds the number. 4 runs scored, 9 hits, and 2 RBIs. His box score total, 26. See, I'm working on that one. I want to get the top 500 box scores of all time. What a chore that will be. All right, I did my 10 baseball books. I did 2 more I'm working on. I'm working on Stan Musial. No, I'm working on baseball rankings. And I'm working on baseball box scores. That'll be 2 more books. Stan Musial will be another book. Oh, and I got the Lou Gehrig book. So that'll be, Lou Gehrig will be the 11th book. 12th book, maybe I'll do the rankings or the box scores, one of the two. 13th will be rankings or box score, and the 14th will be Stan Musial, and the 15th book will be Henry Aaron. And then maybe Tony Gwynn after that. And maybe Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams. We'll see. See if I have the patience to do it. That does it. Episode 1000. I wanted to highlight my 10 baseball books, what I'm working on, and why I'm a baseball fan. And the baseball history is amazing. And you think that 1,000 videos commenting and analyzing baseball history and stats would run out. I'm just getting started. There's more to cover. Amazing history, the game of baseball. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later next time. We'll continue doing videos on the YouTube channel.